Yeah, 1, 2, yeah.
Okay. So the first thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna have some charts as I had mentioned. So if somebody can run those. And for the people online, if you go on herroyalroots.com, on the home page, just scroll down and it'll say Patience PDF or Patience Paper or something. It's like a black link. Click it and then you'll download the same chart that we all have. Okay, so let me get mine. Just to kind of recap a little bit. So last week we dealt with patience is a work. And we talked about the work being a ruach work. It's a cyclical work that we all have to go through. And it's necessary for spiritual growth. Okay? So just to give you an idea of the intention, or to set the intention of what we're going to cover today. So today we're going to deal with what the word patience is, and then the process of patience, because we didn't really go into detail about that. So there is a word, one singular word, that gives you the length of your patience. And then within that patience is the actual process that each of us have to follow. And so what we'll conclude with is, what is the purpose and the goal of the patience process? Okay, so it's like three things. Okay, so on the chart that you're going to pull up, it's the stuff that I read last week. I know it's small. I can make some bigger ones for the people here, and I can pull it up again online as well. But it covers the whole process. So from Hul all the way to Kum. And so we're going to look at this process, and this process of patience, and I've been like testing out the process, just looking through scriptural things. And every single character and every single person in Scripture, including the Mashiach, went through the process of patience. It's crazy. Like, it is a actual thing. Who knew? Right? Okay, so the verses that we have that we're going to be looking at, because we understand now as we transitioned from a westernized linear thinking into the Hebrew walk, into a cyclical thinking, that everything is a cycle. And we also know that the people who wrote in Scripture understood biblical thought. They were not coming at the reader or the audience through a westernized Greco-Roman thought process. They were coming with a Hebraic thought. So the reason why we use James or Yaakov, same as Jacob. King James actually changed the name of the book James to James as tribute to himself. So his name is actually Jacob. And Jacob, the reason why this verse is so important is because he saw a cyclical pattern, and in the whole work, so you should read all of James, he's actually talking about how to make it through things. And so he is actually the person that coined this process of patience. I stole the title from him, Yosh, because it sounds good, right? So James says in Yaakov chapter 1, starting at verse 2, he gives a greeting in verse 1. Starting at verse 2, he says, "My brethren," so he's talking to you guys and us as a whole, "count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh," patience is a work, "worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." Okay, so on the board, I kind of wrote out, sorry about that, some key words. And I wrote out these key words because this is something I think each person should kind of go through and look at. But I'm going to highlight and give you the definition of each of the words. This way. So the key words for what we're going to look at today are patience. Okay, so patience, as I showed you on this chart, this is the process of patience. But the word for patience is a Hebrew word, arak. Arak. Okay? Arak. And it literally means long. I know. I thought the same thing. I was like, but the length is not the focus as much as for something to be a particular length means it comes to an end. Okay? And so the example that came in my head was this. It would be one way if I told you, be patient, and you never knew what the end was going to be or when the end was going to come. It is like a form of torture. But if you knew that your patience or your waiting led to something, then it's easier to endure that process. Okay, so if you look at the beginning of the process, there's this birthing, but at the end, there's inheritance. You know at the end of your patience process, you are now ready for your inheritance. Okay, so that is our focal point. So I thought about Jade and Ari, and I thought about cooking. If I told them, prepare for dinner, so they're doing all their tasks, prepare for dinner, and I'm never cooking, that's torture. I'm hungry, you asked me to do a task, and then I get done with my task and there's no food here. But if I tell them prepare for dinner, and in the process of them preparing, they start to smell food cooking, and I'm like setting the table, they're like, okay, she said to prepare, and I can actually see her making preparation on her side as well. The reason why we need the process of patience, this actual chart, is because the Most High is doing something while we're going through our process. But if you can't smell it, if you can't see him setting the table, then it makes it difficult to endure the process all the way through. Does that make sense? Okay. So the idea of long has an end though. So it's long because it's whatever length is necessary. That's why it's long. Because what may be short to you, right, may be long for me. And what may be long for you may be short to me. So it's tailor-made to each individual person. You see, there's no time limit on any of one of these phases. Because we know some people who are 50, 60, 20, 30, stuck in the same phases that some people crossed over when they were 10 or 12. Or, everybody matures at their own pace, but they're expected to continue the maturation process. Okay, so the next word that was in that thing is trying or proving. The process of patience is to prove you or to try you, not to tempt you, right? But to try you. So the idea is to try your faith in that third verse. And the idea of trying your faith is the idea of faith. So faith is this. We say amen or aman, and it's securely fastened. But I'm going to give you another form of what faith means. And it means to try that which is put into something. So we do it, when you put a Ziploc, you put food in a Ziploc, and maybe it's liquid, and you squeeze it, and you wait for it to look. And you push it all the way down, and then you turn it over. Or you, not probably all the way over, but you tip it to see if anything's going to leak out. The trying of your faith is that now these contents have been poured into this vessel. Now I need to make sure the vessel is going to hold the contents. So if you look on the chart, just I'm not making all this up, if you get down to the cool phase, so Kaf, Vav, Lamed, it's the dark blue before the purple. When you get there, it says tamed for the yoke. I thought of an example from you, even though I'm with Leotis, I don't think you that country. But he talked about this idea of horses that are tamed or that are broken. And so what do you do before you hop on the horse? First you put a saddle on the horse. You want to see if he's tamed for the yoke. Before I even get on you, I'm going to make sure you're not going to buck me off. So in our process as Hebrews, right, we get to a place where, okay, I put these contents in you, but now I need to try the vessel to see if when I put the burden or I put you to work, tame for the yoke, when I put you to work, are you going to buck or are you going to kick against the pricks? That was the Most High's issue with Shaul. He was like, dude, you've made it all the way to this part. You're tamed for the yoke, but dude, now you're kicking against the pricks. You've got Torah, you've been filled. So what's the issue now? I have work for you and you don't want to do it. And so he then, sends him, the story. Okay, so you're going to be tried or proven. So the process, there's a process in trying and proving too. So each phase has its own process. We're going to get into that. But the process of trying and proving are these words. And the words mean, so yakah means to refine or to remove impurities. So as a person, if you were starting at the orange and you made it all the way to the blue, you'd be like, dang, I'm good. But then when you got to the blue, he's like, okay, now I gotta do some more work. And you're like, are you serious? So it's the refining process. So for a horse, just because you can put the saddle on a horse, doesn't mean that the horse can actually keep the saddle on for a very long time. It's gonna chafe the horse, it's gonna be irritating. So you make it wear a little bit longer until the horse can actually endure wearing the saddle for a long time. Then you're gonna put your body weight on the horse. So you're not gonna ride them for 10 hours the first time you put the saddle on, right? So it's a proving process. So the first process in the trying and proving, which is right here, it is to refine, remove impurities, or to make pure. The second part is to meet, gather, call, or select. And it actually needs to read as well. So in our process, when we've gotten to the point where you put the contents in us, you have to keep putting it in. So if we're talking about the word, you have to keep pouring it in. You have to gather. You have to commune. You have to be now put into community, right? The next part of it is to press. So then he's going to squeeze tight. So now you're gathered into a group, but then there's going to be a purification process of that group. Who in the group is the group that you're supposed to be yoked with? Just because there's a group of, oxen out in the field doesn't mean that every oxen is going to be yoked with you. So who are now you going to be yoked with, right? The next part of it is then to yoke. So then once you've been pressed and you've been put into this select called out group, then it's time to team up. Just because you've been selected and you're a lone ranger, you're still in the process. You haven't even made it through that process because every person that has been called to work is called to team up. You're not working alone. This is not a lone ranger walk. We are called to assemble. These are commandments because he knows that the tendency of the Hebrew is to try to do things on their own. Okay? Okay, so this idea of patience, trying your faith so that you can be entire. 2 words here. The first word is natsav, and it means to stand or to be a pillar. Okay? So you're supposed to stand or be a pillar as a nation of Israel, which is to be ensign to the Gentiles and to the other people. We're supposed to be able to stand and stand firm. That's that last phase, kum, on the chart. Okay? But you can't stand. It's funny. There's a mystic, a secular, well, not secular. He's a Christian. They made him Christian. I really feel like he's like an ancient Asian guy. But anyway, his name is Watchman Nee. And he has a book called Sit, Walk, Stand. And he uses, that? He uses the idea of you will mount up on wings like eagles. You will run and not grow weary. You will walk and not grow faint. And then the last part is to stand. And so this idea of the walk, when you look at this path, in the beginning, you're going to blow past from cool to, it's funny, they're both the same word, from cool to cool. You're going to blow through those phases because it's kind of, you expect it. But the last part is literally, now you have to sit with this yoke on you so you can get comfortable. Then you got to walk a little bit with the yoke on you with somebody else. So sometimes you want to walk this way and this person wants to walk this way. But the final thing is to be able to stand and be balanced with each person equally carrying their weight. Right? It's that same exact process. So now you wouldn't even really, when you get so in tune with this process as you go through it over and over again, you'll have the person when you go through it the next time that you're yoked with. So how much easier will it be to plow through this process of patience when you have the person that's yoked with you to go through the process with, right? You'll get so good at it that I've seen people who have like dogs and big scary dogs or big scary animals where they're so in tune with the person that's leading them. So now I can just tell you, you can literally talk to your animal and be like, go over there and do this. Don't need a leash, don't need a yoke, don't need anything. I think that's what Paul meant when he was saying that the law is your schoolmaster, right? But once you have it, then there's no more need for the yoke of it because now it's in you. The training is now inside of you. So now when you enter into any process of the Hebrew, you know what the process is. So now you don't have to be walking around with this paper like, okay, let me see. So, okay, I'm right here. It becomes natural to you to move through the process. That's what Torah is. When Torah is in your heart, it's because you've worn the yoke long enough to where even without the yoke, it feels like you have it on you, in a sense. You know what's expected of you. So now you can take people who can ride horse bareback. Because why? You know, the horse knows what to expect when you get on the horse. So then we should know what to expect when the Father is trying or proving our faith. He's proving the vessel every time he pours more into you. So don't just look to go through the process once, but as you go through the process, and there's a word here, it's the, where is it? I wrote it down too. Patience is prolonged, that word arak. It also means to stretch the flesh, right? To stretch it. So that every time you go through the arak process, he's going to stretch you a little bit so that he can pour more in. But every time he pours more in, then he has to prove it. I have to make sure it's going to stay in. Then he pours a little bit more in, he's going to stretch, he's going to pour a little bit more in, he's going to prove it every single time. So if you don't want to go through this process, then you don't want to grow. So some people choose to just stay in one phase. They're like, you know what, this is good. I'm good right here. I can't take anymore. And that's why that idea of putting new wine in old wineskins, it's not because of the age of the person. It's their inability to remain malleable, to continue to stretch. The skin has now reached its stretching capacity. So you don't pour anything else in it. It's holding what it can hold. So we want to get to through the process, though, to where we can hold all that we've been made to hold, because that's when you sit. And that's when you rise or you stand as an ensign, because now when people come to you, you are complete and whole, entire, wanting nothing. And so the idea of entire, I gave you the natsav, but the other word is shalem or shalom. And it means really peace, but it's not the idea of peace without going through a process, but it means to make whole by adding or subtracting. So sometimes in the process, he's not always going to add something, but he also may take something. And so the issue, and we talked about this morning with Job, is his issue was a taking away. Yah giveth, Yah taketh away, blessed be Yah. Why? Because I'm still in the process. If he's not giving or taking away, then I am essentially spiritually dead, and I might as well just lay down and die. Right? So the giving and the taking creates the balance. Sometimes you got a little bit more on this side. Sometimes you got a little bit, something you got to give to somebody else so you can pour something new into you. So when we're going through the process of patience, we shouldn't always look to come out with something. Sometimes we might come out without something, or without someone for that matter. And we have to be okay with how the Most High takes us through that process. Okay, and last but not least, I had patience has an expected end. But just because it's the end doesn't mean it's the end, because often, I have this quote in our room, the end is often the beginning. The end is definitely the beginning, because in a cyclical process, when you're at the end, you're coming back to start all over again. Right? So, but it has an expected end, and you should know when you're at the end and at the beginning. Right? Okay, and what do I have last on here? I think that was it. So when you look through this chart, what I want us to do in this room, and the people online to do, is look at the chart, and don't think about just one thing you're going through, but if it is one thing, I mean, it's fine if it's a huge thing. Look on this chart and see where you are. Circle which one, or put a check next to which phase in your current life that you feel like you're at. Which phase?
You go clockwise, right?
Yes, clockwise. So we're going clockwise. We're starting at the orange, and we're going yellow, green, light green, green. So start at the orange, and go that way, and put a check mark or circle where you feel like you are in those phases. If it's too small, tell me a color, and I'll read it out loud.
Can you be at more than one phase at once, or is it like a back and forth?
Okay, well, give me the two phases, and then we can kind of see, like, if you don't mind. Go ahead. Okay, so try to find the phase that is
most like what I'm doing.
because if you're at 4, I would pick the first one. Because then if you're at 4 phases, it means that you kind of didn't complete the ones that are above that one,
Right.
or below that one. Yeah. So if you feel like you're at more than one, the best thing to do on a journey, if you get lost or you feel like you got too many choices, is to return back to the last place that you can remember. If you're looking for something, you go back to the last place that's familiar. So if you're in multiple phases, which means that you did like the public school system and maybe skip some phases before you completed some other ones, circle one, the one that you know for sure you've completed. Okay? And something interesting about the Most High is He will do that with you. If you forget some lessons learned in the process, He'll be like, go back. Go back 3 spaces like Candyland. You need to go back. And He has no problem with that because what He's trying to do is, I have a plan for you. I'm perfecting you. I want you to be whole. I don't want you to be broken. So if you skip through phases because things get hard, you're like, you know what, I'm ready, I'm done. It's like, no, cakes that people take out that are not finished are not good. It's like, you could, wait, you said chicken. We'll give you salmonella. It will make you sick. So go ahead and do that, and then I'm gonna pull up, I'm gonna read this and I'm gonna pull up this verse, because these 2 things don't necessarily go together, but it goes with the whole thing. So I put patience is an action word. I gave you a rock. It's a length or a time or a stretching out that contains a process which is used by Yahuwah to try your faith. Your faith is constantly on trial. Constantly on trial. Lauren Hill has a lyric, and I was trying to find I actually used this verse as a verse to kind of like culminate a lyric that she had, and it says, if you say you love him like you do, he'll try you. So, I mean, we can sit on that for a second. If you say you love him like you do, he's going to try you.
Yeah. That's a good one. Okay, I'm on my way out.
Okay, I'm reading both versions. So we're going to Isaiah 48, 10 through 11. Isaiah 48, 10 through 11. And so what we're going to do is we're going to keep these. And we're going to do checkups. I think quarterly is probably a good phase where we go back and we check up on these things. Because not saying that there's a time limit on where you are, but if you're in a process, one, we should support each other in that process. I made a statement last week and I want to clarify it. Because it was mistaken, it could have been mistaken if it wasn't, that we don't check on each other. And I didn't mean that we don't check on each other like we don't do those physical things, but I'm definitely talking holistically. And so we may check on each other for our physical needs, but what about for our psychological and spiritual needs? Like Janie, I totally failed her on Wednesday, so and you have to be okay with people letting you know where you've not met up to the expectation. I was supposed to call her on Wednesday about Purim. Totally slipped my mind. Totally did. It's my bad. So I have to say, okay, I need to do better at not just being here on the days I'm supposed to be here, but also doing the stuff I'm supposed to do when I'm not here. That's something that I was like, hey, I felt heck about it. I was like, wow, just totally dropped the ball on that one. I consider myself to be responsible, but clearly not as responsible as I should be. So, so that was for me. But it wasn't something I was like, you know what? No, I was like, no. Okay, I have to fix that. So one, I gotta make sure she gets the information she didn't get because she wasn't there. Right? So then it becomes personal work for me. And not work in the sense of like work, but a task that I have to complete. Because you don't leave anybody who's trying to carry out the function of their process without something that you have. Right? Okay. Isaiah 48, 10, and it's already highlighted in Mom's script. Okay, it says, behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. For my own sake, I will act. He said it twice. I didn't just repeat that. For how can my name be profaned, and my glory I will not give to another? This process is a refining process, and Maury mentioned this message today. The whole idea of the process and going through the phases so that when you stand up, you represent me, right? We do it. When a person finishes something, like you said, if you send something out before it's done, you'll be like, yeah, why'd you do that, right? No, Yah wants us to be able to stand amongst men And amongst those who are looking at it, he wants them to be able to be like, I cannot find any fault in this person. Why? Because they're walking in his word. If you're walking his word, he'll never find any fault in you. One of the things that I keep playing in my head is this idea that against such things, there is no law. When we're walking in the Spirit, which is the work of patience, the Ruach work, when we're doing that work, you won't find flaws. It's when we interject our own will into the process that you find flaws. And so anytime in this process that you interject your own will, you're going to start the process over again because you added an impurity to something he was trying to make pure. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So that was my connection to that verse. So as we keep this and as we go through this, we want to make sure that we do a check on where we are and that we complete that process. And we dig deep, because I didn't give you everything for that process, because what's happening to you in that process is individual to you, right? The process is the same for all of us, but what you're going through at that time and what you have to purge out is individual to you, and you know that. That's that introspection. That's the thing that you need to work on. That's the thing that I need to work on, okay? So we'll do a checkup on this process of patience. And let's do it at Shavuot. So at Shavuot, so we're entering, right now, all of us technically should start off at the beginning. We're entering into a new year. We're entering into the first set of our feast days, right? So we all should technically, wherever you are, scratch, you didn't make it through the process last year. We're all starting off right now at Hul. So we're all starting at the orange. Everybody together. So as a goal for this group, we should all, by next year, make it back to this phase together. So we're all on the same level playing field. We are all currently yoked together. Now, if you take the yoke off, that's on you. Then there's a whole nother process of trying to redeem that brother back into the fold. But right now, we're all yoked together. Everybody in this room, we're all responsible for making sure that all of us make it through this process, whatever our process is. Does that make sense? Okay, so we'll do our checkup at Shavuot. That's when we're going to go get to the law, because that's going to be a purging process. We should be, let's see, where is purge? We should be at probably the dark green, because those last two blue phases and that purple, that might take for the rest of the, but we're going to check in at the purging process, because when we pour that word in between Shavuot, let's say Shavuot, we'll check in at Shavuot, and then we'll check in again at Yom Kippur. So we should have, by Yom Kippur, got at least to the purging phase as a group. Does that make sense? Okay. Good? That's fine? All right.